Welcome to Andrea Lake 101, The Making of a Billionaire. Oh my God, you guys, it's a Sticker Wars episode. Let's go. Sticker Wars are on. They are in fucking full effect. I have so much goddamn tea to drop you that I cannot even wait. So I went to the Milken Institute, also known as the Global Economic Institute. Who goes there? Good question. Every private equity company. Oh, yeah, all of them, virtually. All the big ones. Lots and lots of people from all the biggest private equity companies, as well as foreign dignitaries, domestic politicians, constituents from all around the world, different people in areas of finance from all around the world, and a whole lot of people from the entertainment industry. Yes, yes, queens, let's go. When did that happen? Well, that happened when mommy's selling a TV show. Yeah, it did. So I am not just only selling a TV show. I am selling a documentary, as well as a TV show. I am selling both right now. I am selling the Sticker Wars documentary, as well as Andrea Lake 101, The Making of a Billionaire. The TV show will just be called The Making of a Billionaire, or perhaps the name will get changed once we move into production. Who the fuck knows? However, that's what we're doing. So I took some good meetings at Milken. So who is at Milken? Good question. In the entertainment industry, the CEO of Amazon Prime. Yeah, the CEO of HBO Max, CEO of Peacock, the head of Sony Pictures, and on and on and on and on. And just, several showrunners, several people connected with the entertainment industry. And they also have celebrities. They have a bunch of random celebrities that come and speak at Milken Institute, which I always think is weird. That is weird to me that they do that. But everybody likes a little bit of glamour. And I'm always telling people, and I told my staff right before I went to the Milken Institute, because I had all these meetings for the television show, like, oh yeah, and then Jason Sudeikis is gonna come. I think I'm saying his name wrong. Magic Johnson and like Peyton Manning and I don't even know. Just a bunch of random celebrities. And I'm always like, why does anyone go to those panels? I think that Ted Lasso is awesome. Okay, it is an awesome show. I watched the first season. I still have 2 more seasons that I get to watch at some point whenever I have time to watch TV. And I also think that he's very charming and very funny, which certainly was the case. I also don't ever go to the celebrity panels because when I am going to the Global Economic Institute, I am doing that to hear about global economics and not to hear from a celebrity who doesn't know anything about global economics. And so when people are like rushing to go see Patrick Dempsey's panel that he was on, I am rushing to go to the panel that is about like, what is the 5-year outlook for global economics, or specifically for individual regions around the world. Those are the panels that I am going to. And this year, to the panel about how streaming services are interconnected with each other, how they work, so that I would have a little bit of insight on what they were most looking for as I am pitching my TV show to these streaming services. I do have my heart set on Netflix. Hi, Netflix. But The Apprentice is playing right now on Amazon Prime, and so, hey, who knows what's going to happen? So as thoroughly canvassed in previous episodes, I know a whole lot about my competitors, and I know a whole lot about private equity. How the fuck do I know so much about private equity? Yeah, because I have been in all these business groups forever, and I've been in the Global Economic Institute for 20 years, and I love business the way that some people love football, so I love to know every single thing about things that I love, and that doesn't really matter if it is Legos or like during the lockdowns, I started watching The Bachelorette, Hannah Brown season, and when I tell you that I dove into Nick Vial's podcast and was like reading all the side stuff and started watching Wit and Rye on YouTube. It doesn't really matter what I like, just that specific season, but it doesn't matter what I like. I like to know everything about the things that I like. Or like if I like a podcast, like as you are all well aware, I love the Morbid podcast. I have listened to every single episode of the Morbid podcast. They have 672 episodes. I started listening last year during all of the chaos when I was rebuilding my sticker empire. And as I would be furiously like shipping boxes myself with Brianna, stuffing envelopes all night long, I would just turn on the Morbid podcast and listen to it while I worked on all of my different things. So it doesn't matter what I love. I like to learn everything about it, which is how I know a whole lot about private equity and a whole lot about global economics and a whole lot about geopolitics. And so at these conferences, that is what I go to, except for that. I was having lunch with one of my homies, with one of my new besties that I met at this conference. And we happened to be having lunch in the room where Jason Sudeikis was coming to speak. It was only a 20-minute speech, so we sat and watched it. It was actually really great. It was about like happiness. And because Everyone on my staff loves Ted Lasso and particularly loves this actor, who I actually didn't realize was like a writer and director of that show. Like I didn't realize he was doing the whole shebang on the show. I was taking pictures for my staff just to be like, oh, how funny. I actually did run to the celebrity one. I obviously didn't, but I was lucky to be there. It was on happiness and pursuing your dreams. And like, it was a lovely little 20-minute segment. And then I pull up one of the pictures to see which one I'm going to send on our group chat at the office. And who is in the forefront of my picture? Yeah, that's right. It's Miss Hannah Brown. I'm like, what the fuck are you doing here? That's amazing. But I actually didn't see her. Otherwise, I would have went up and said hello and talked to her. I didn't see her until like hours later when I was going through the photos. But you just truly never know who you're going to run into at the Global Economic Institute. And that certainly was the case this year. So as I go into there, I'm like, oh, wait a minute. Aries Private Management bought Sticker Giant, right? Now, I know how much all of my competitors make, or at least I have a really fucking good guess as to how much they do in revenue annually. I know if they're bigger than me. I know if they're smaller than me. Spoiler alert, all of these big ones that I'm talking about are bigger than me right now because I'm being transparent with our numbers. But we are absolutely on track to 500x our sales again this year, which will make us a $10 million annual revenue company. And we are absolutely on track already to 5x our sales the year after that. We have a whole entire roadmap to doing that. And all we have to do is follow the roadmap. And we are, in fact, following the roadmap. So this year, within this calendar year, we should go from 1.95 million to 10 million in annual revenue in a single calendar year. And you guys are going to get to watch us be able to do that. And how are we doing that? We are winning new clients. We are not competing in the Instagram space. That's why you'll notice when you go into Instagram, as soon as you follow us, you're immediately going to get targeted by all of our competitors, and they are all fighting over the Instagram space. They are all fighting over the Google ad space. Now we're just barely baby starting to do some stuff so that like when you type in sticker junkie, we actually come up first instead of coming up third or not at all in the search. However, we are going after humongous clients right now. That's what's going to be most of our big growth. Like at least 50% of our big growth is going to be when we snag 1 or 2 or 10 or 20 clients that spend about $500,000 a year. In addition to that, we're doing so much outreach right now to dispensaries, to breweries, to tattoo shops, to our core audience of people. And we're doing tons of outreach to places like Planned Parenthood, who were like, hey, we're really aligned. Like I worked at KRAL for a really long time. I'm an individual women-owned company. We pay our people fairly and we have this mission to get everyone on a living wage. Right now we are on a fair wage. We are on an absolutely fair wage. I believe the lowest person in our company makes $22 an hour. Oh no, we just hired somebody else. So for the first 3-month probationary period, they'll make $20 an hour and then get popped up to $22 an hour. Fair pay is super important to me. But a living wage is even more important to me, and that is going to be a main topic because it chapped my hide a lot. The way that I heard about the wealthiest people in the world talk about money, and the way that I was hearing the wealthiest people in the world have a complete disconnect from understanding that if you are a retirement fund manager and you decimate the middle class and you decimate the minimum wage while simultaneously increasing the price on everything, there will be no one's retirement money to manage any longer because nobody will be saving for retirement any longer, which you already see as a crisis in this country. And so as I'm like enmeshed in the economics of the world and diving back into this area, I was like, oh yeah, the companies that bought my biggest competitors, the company that bought Sticker App and the company that bought Sticker Giant, they're going to be here at the Global Economic Institute. So I reached out to some people from Aries Management, which is the company that owns Sticker Giant. And I didn't really hear back from them, which is fine. Why didn't I hear back from them? Because there's this thing called consolidators. It's like, what is a consolidator? Basically, a consolidator is a company that rolls up other companies. It's a big private equity fund that purchases a bunch of different companies that are similar in one way or another. There's basically 2 categories that falls into. Either they buy companies that all do kind of the same amount of annual revenue, right? Like they're targeting companies that make between $2 to $4 million in annual revenue, or they're targeting purchasing companies that do between $10 and $30 million in annual revenue. And it doesn't really matter what industry it is. They're more looking at the different price point of that company and the EBITDA, which is the profit of the company. That's what their main objective is to find a bunch of similar companies in that range. But the consolidators that we're going to talk about today are consolidators that are rolling up a bunch of different companies within the same industry. There's one called Resource Label Group, and they have purchased 34 print shops just like my print shop to date, all of whom manufacture like stickers or labels or something in the promotional product space. But they are actually not just owned by Resource Label Group. They are an arm of Ares Management. Ares Management right here is a 24 billion hedge fund. That's right, folks. $24 billion annual. And they purchased my friends over at Sticker Giant. Now, I know how much Sticker Giant does in revenue a year because I'm me. And it's really easy for me to figure out how many sales one of my competitors is doing by how many employees they have, how many of each different type of machinery they have, etc. But in addition to that, I knew the guy that used to own that company, and so I knew what they were doing and their most likely trajectory of growth. So I have a range. And when I tell you they are a large company, they're a big company. They do lots and lots and lots of millions of tens of millions of dollars in revenue is my best guess. I haven't looked at their books, but they are not a small company. And so it seems like that would have been a good-sized acquisition for Resource Label Group, who is owned by Ares. So then I'm waiting for the bus, and I run into one of the principals at Ares Management. This is one of the biggest dudes over there, and this is a large company that they purchased. I say to him, "Oh yeah, you purchased one of my competitors." And he goes, "Oh, which one?" And I go, "Sticker Giant." And he looks at me and clearly has no fucking idea what I'm talking about. Never heard of the place. Has never heard of that company. That's how big this private equity fund is. And I go, "Oh yeah, they were purchased by Resource Label Group." And I think I said the name wrong. I said like Resource Label Management. And he goes, "Oh yeah, Resource Label Group. Right. They're one of our consolidators." Yep. So one of the people that works for me, Dana, is very concerned with as we grow and as we scale and as we hit big scale. She's not the only person, but she has been vocal with me that she's concerned of like, hey, I like working here because I like working for a small business and I love our vibe. If you saw the Sticker Junkie Olympics and the Sticker Junkie Olympics reel that we did, Dana is in the referee shirt because she created the Sticker Junkie Olympics and is like awesome. I love Dana. She's our lead mechanic. She's our night manager over at Sticker Junkie. And I made a promise to her. I made a promise to all my employees, but specifically to Dana. It will always feel this way, no matter how big we get, because this is our culture. This is our company that we're building together. I cannot do it without my team. My team cannot do it without the C-suite. There is not a huge separation. And we do have the ethos in my company, if this is your first time listening, that the top person in my company does not get paid more than 3.5 times the bottom person in my company of an on-base salary, period. They don't. Now, when we distribute bonuses, will the top bonused person make more than 3.5 times more somebody than I hired last week who also is going to get a bonus when we hand out company-wide bonuses? Yes, fucking of course. Will it be 20,000 times higher? No, it will not. Will it be like at Boeing where the CEO makes $34.8 million a year and the lowest paid employee makes like whatever, $14 an hour? No, 0 fucking percent. No, it will not. And Dana's point was like, yeah, the thing is that when you work at a private equity company, like you can't get a hold of your boss. Like you can't even usually get a hold of the CEO at a company that's that size, even if you have a really good idea, but you certainly are not going to be able to get a hold of your actual boss, who is the CEO of that private equity firm. And I was like, yeah, in this case, the highest up people at that private equity company, yeah, they don't even know that they own Sticker Giant. At least this guy didn't. So do some people at Ares Management know that? Yes, of course. Did this guy know that? No, he had never heard of this huge, massive company, which is a competitor of ours that if I was to throw out a guess does 20 or 30 times our amount of annual revenue, maybe more. Maybe more. Yeah, never heard of it. And that is a problem. Why is that a problem? Because consolidators don't just exist for your local print shop. right? And let's be clear, like that's the exit that a lot of entrepreneurs want. They're psyched when they get to sell their company for 30 or 40 or 50 or $100 million or what. I don't know what that acquisition was. I really don't. But whatever it was, or 200, I have no idea. I have no concept at all of how much they purchased that company for. Like you're psyched when you are an entrepreneur and you get that exit. But like when I was growing up, in the 80s, Apple made millionaires, multi-millionaires out of most of their employees because they got huge and people got to participate and get shares of that company. And a lot of companies worked that way when I was growing up. And now it makes like mega national headline news when like Chobani gives a percentage of the sale to their employees. Like it's just not normal anymore for employers to not just like care about their employees, but for the financial success of the company to very, very directly, positively impact the employees in that company when the company does well or exits or anything, or even just does a lot of profit that year. And because I know the guy who used to own Sticker Giant, he ran that company the way that I run my company. He ran it with open books. He explained the financials to his people. And on years when they had really big profits, everybody got bonuses out of the profits of that company. Is that still how it runs today? I don't know. Like it might still run that way. I don't have inside knowledge. But what I do know is it doesn't feel the same when you work for a big faceless corporation that very fucking for sure does not know who you are. And in this case, didn't know that his company had acquired this very many lots of millions-dollar company. When you purchase from my company, when you purchase from stickerjunkie.com, using the promo code Andrea Lake 101, you get 10% off. But when you purchase from my company, $22 out of every $100 you spend goes directly into the pocket of my employees. So when you go, our average order is $300 and you spend your $300 with Sticker Junkie, $66 of that goes into my employees' pockets. If you spend $50 at my company, $11 of that goes into my employees' pockets because I hold aside 22% for payroll. As we grow and as we scale, we get to do so much more for our employees. Like right now, as we're hitting our targets and hitting our months, if we hit all of our months between now, it's May 15th of 2025. If we hit our months in May, June, July, every single one of my employees gets healthcare benefits, which they don't have right now because we can't afford to give it to them. In order for us to be able to have enough money at 22% payroll, which is a high amount to pull aside for payroll, most companies are going to try and get by on like 7% payroll. That doesn't mean that their employees are not well paid. They might be very well paid on that 7%. But what that means is that when the company really grows and really thrives, the profit pile is going to get bigger. The company, the private equity company, is going to take that profit pile and put it in the pockets of their already very wealthy investors, instead of taking the extra in that profit pile and putting it into the pockets of their employees. And at a small business, at my small business, when we thrive and when we grow and when we scale, number one, everyone on my staff will be at a $32 an hour minimum wage. Like, why $32 an hour? Because $31 an hour is a living wage in San Diego. And I want every single person on my staff to make a living wage. I want every single person on my staff to be able to comfortably afford to purchase the products that we are selling in our companies. And like, if they want to buy a house, buy a house. If they want to take a trip around the world, take a trip around the world. If they want to have a baby, they can afford to have a baby. And there's so much weird crosstalk going on in America right now that is not addressing the actual biggest, most fundamental issue with America, which is the massive disparity in the distribution of wealth. And the thing about it is, it really is fine and can work economically totally fine for billionaires to still exist. Nobody would begrudge Jeff Bezos his $500 million yacht, his $500 million yacht. Nobody would even make a big deal about that if every single one of his employees was at an actual living wage for wherever they were domiciled at, right? So if he has an employee in San Diego County, they're making a minimum wage of $32 an hour. They have full medical, dental, all of the benefits. They get bonuses on a regular basis. You know, they get 4 to 6 weeks of vacation time a year. They have plenty of maternity leave options, etc. If the multi-billionaires in our society were setting up their companies that way, I don't think people would hate them the way that they do. I really don't. I think they'd be like, oh, maybe one day I could be a billionaire because I could be an amazing boss that makes sure that everyone on my team is really well taken care of. So, like, will everyone on my staff just all be paid at $32 an hour? No. It'll go from $32 an hour to $112 an hour. It will go up on a 3.5 time range. Will there be bonuses on top of that when there's lots of profit? Yes. Will someone make 300 times more bonus than the lowest person? No, they will not. Everything will be done on an equation, on a sliding scale of you have been here this long, you are on this many committees, you put in this much overtime voluntarily, which you obviously fucking get paid for, you do XYZ, you have a manager, you are managing this many people, whatever the equation is, there will be some equation that's just really fair. And as the company gets richer and wealthier and more vibrant, all of my people will get richer and wealthier and more vibrant because they will participate in the growth of the company, just as they are contributing to the growth of the company. That doesn't make me a socialist or a communist or a radical. It makes me a person that wants everyone to win and thinks that in the wealthiest economy in the world, everyone can win. Somebody doesn't have to lose in order for you to win. And I keep hearing things like, oh, they can get by on $2. Oh, they can get by on this. Oh, that's fair, from someone who is buying a $500 million yacht, or from someone at Boeing who is making $34 million a year, their CEO, and doesn't even probably most likely understand that that is a poverty wage if you are paying somebody $16.50 an hour and they're living in a city. That's not a living wage. And so there has been a thing that has been happening in America over the last 100 years where this disparity is getting wider and wider and wider and wider and wider. And I don't find it to be a really big problem that at the top there's so much. I find it to be a much larger problem that at the bottom there's so little, because it is such a profoundly solvable issue. This is not a political podcast, but everything is political right now because things that shouldn't be anywhere near politics, things that shouldn't be touching politics, things that shouldn't be happening in politics are now happening in politics so that people's votes are swayed in certain directions that they might really like in one or two or three regards, but is really fucking them over in other ways. So right now we have a huge bill in front of Congress. It's called the Big Beautiful Bill. And what it does essentially at its core, you can just go read it. You don't have to fight me in the comments. Go read the whole bill. It is available for public consumption. What it does is gives huge, massive, multiple billion-dollar tax breaks to billionaires and to corporations. And I'm going to benefit a whole fucking lot from it as my company scales and grows into those categories, and as my trading portfolio continues to grow bigger and bigger and bigger. I am currently at 36.7% profit for the year. Remember, I never sell at a loss, so that number only will go up. So it's gonna work out great for me. And it shouldn't, and I don't want it to, because it is a zero-sum game. With our budget, we have a certain amount. And so if you give a huge, big-ass tax break over here to corporations and very incredibly wealthy individuals who 1,000,000% do not need a tax break, that's going to come from over here. So where are the proposed cuts coming from? Little kids' school lunches that don't have enough to eat, Head Start programs, Medicaid. Yeah. It's going to force a whole lot of hospital closures, because in different areas where Medicaid is covering more than 25% of the population, it will threaten the hospital's ability to exist. That's problematic. Social Security, literally giving someone, right, a huge tax break. And a lot of these large corporations, they hardly pay anything in taxes, because they'll say, oh, well, if we put $100 million towards fighting these tax bills, then it will save us $1 billion in taxes. And we don't want to pay the $1 billion in taxes. And I'm like, okay, cool. But it actually really costs a lot of money to run a government. And a lot of big corporations get what is lovingly referred to as corporate welfare, where they're getting huge incentivizations and huge amounts of dollars to supplement their business from the government because they have been deemed, quote, too big to fail. That is not true. If they fail, somebody else will come along and take them on and make it profitable. So all of these cuts to Medicaid, to Social Security, to all of our social programs out there that create a net so that the bottom part of our society doesn't fall below the net are going to be gone. They're getting decimated right now. So look, this is what it actually means. If you have a person, let's say, that made $400 million in revenue in a year, they're probably in a state where there's no state taxes, let's be honest. But let's say they're in California and they're paying like 8% of their 400 million to state taxes, and they're probably paying like between 22 and 27% to federal income tax. Let's just do easy math here, and we'll say they're paying 25% in federal income tax out of their $400 million in revenue. That means that they owe the federal government $100 million. Now, come on, kids. These folks, they have all kinds of tax accountants and attorneys, and the ones that want to ditch their tax bill, they pay zero because they figure out a way to hide all of their money, and they think it's somehow patriotic to pay $0 in taxes while simultaneously having corporations that are receiving corporate welfare from the US government. I am not a Democrat at all. I know it sounds like I am, but I am just a person that is explaining the way that economics work in this country as a member of the Global Economic Institute. This is how it works. So you have $400 million in revenue, and you're expected to pay 25% of that to the federal government, but you probably have a whole bunch of loopholes. So what you actually already only are going to be owing them after all of your loopholes already is going to be 27 million or something, because you're going to get like a 70% reduction on your taxes. But let's just do make-believe pretend and use real numbers and say that they actually are planning, like I do, to just pay all of the taxes that you owe, whatever it's calculated. That's what it is. That's your part of the pie that you're paying for. And so out of your 400 million, you're going to pay $100 million in taxes. Under the new big, beautiful bill in front of Congress right now as we speak, that tax basis will be reduced by like 40%. When I tell you the difference between someone that made $400 million in revenue last year, walking away with either $300 million because they paid all of their taxes, or $340 million because they got this 40% tax cut that's in the big, beautiful bill, there is no difference. None, zero at all whatsoever in what they are going to do with their money because they have this extra $40 million on top of their $300 million that they already had tax clear. None. There's none whatsoever. There's no lifestyle difference that's going to happen with that $40 million. How are we paying right now to give these additional tax cuts to billionaires and to huge corporations? Good question. We are cutting Medicaid. We are cutting Medicare. We are cutting Social Security for our indigent elderly people who can no longer work and paid into it their whole life. We're cutting that. And the cuts to Medicaid and Medicare are threatening actually closure of hospitals where more than I think it's like 27%, if more than 27% of that hospital has patients that are covered by Medicaid, then that hospital will not be able to continue to pay their bills. And so very likely those hospitals will be shut down. Am I joking? No. Why are we doing that? Literally to give tax breaks to billionaires. That is a very economically bad idea. If you ever go to the Global Economic Institute and talk to a bunch of Nobel Prize winning economists, they will explain to you that that is a bad idea. They will explain to you in depth that that is a bad idea and why that is a bad idea. But I think that if you're watching this far, you're already with me and you're like, yeah, that's a bad idea. Let's don't do that. Yeah, that's great. Call your Congress people. It is the Republicans that are pushing this through. They have control of the House. They have control of the Senate. They are increasing taxes on working class poor, on working class, and on the middle class. They are reducing all benefits in virtually every category, as you're seeing. They have just stripped out food protections. So like your milk is no longer getting checked. This is not a political podcast. I'm literally just telling you this is just what's happening right now, and imposing an additional 30% tax in the form of tariffs. I know that if you're watching my podcast, then you probably have a pretty strong understanding of how tariffs work. But just in case, don't feel embarrassed if you don't, because who the fuck understands this shit? But there is a lie that is being told in a bunch of different reels, and they're saying oh, we're sticking it to China by the tariffs. I'm like, you do understand that it is Americans that pay the tariffs. It's not the Chinese that pay the tariffs. The idea behind the tariffs, not these tariffs, the idea behind tariffs in general is that if you charge a tariff on an imported item into the country, it will encourage the country to make more of that item internally instead of going overseas to purchase that item. Now, in our case, in Sticker Junkie, we already manufacture everything in the United States. Not only is our vinyl manufactured in the United States, we actually produce the petroleum that the vinyl will be made out of. So we're in pretty good shape there. Whoa, except for what? Except for inks. Right. All of our printing inks, yeah, those are manufactured in China. Some of ours are manufactured in Mexico. And as we have these extra tariffs being added on, that means that when the inks come into this country, the importer of those inks is now getting a 30% tariff. So what are they going to do? They're going to charge a 30% higher price, but that's incorrect. They're going to keep their margins correct, and they're going to know that there might be trouble with importing now. So they're probably going to do a 40 to 50% increase on the cost of our inks. So what are we going to do? We're going to buy those inks for 40 or 50% more, and we're going to increase our price to cover the cost of the tariff. So what are you going to do when you go and buy stickers? You're going to pay more for them. So that's happening with every single category of everything that's not actually manufactured in the United States. Also, there are like 500,000 open manufacturing jobs in the United States right now at factories right now that people are hiring for. But most Americans, they don't want to work in a factory. They really don't. And so it's really hard to fill those jobs. And most of the factories want to be in places that have a really depressed economy so that they can get workers at an inexpensive rate, except for that places with a depressed economy also have really serious opioid addiction issues. So there's this whole thing that happens when you go into something like the Milken Institute or into something like geopolitics or into something like global economics, which has been a heavy area of interest for me for years, which is that the solutions never fit on a bumper sticker. And so if you're watching something on any news feed, and it doesn't matter which one it is, if you're only responding to it with abject anger and can't have a conversation about what it is, you're probably wrong. So if you just start yelling about how tariffs are a great idea, you're probably just not right. And then if you start digging in to so then why were tariffs out of nowhere against the advice of every economist, regardless if they're a conservative economist or a liberal economist, or like most economists, probably libertarian, probably very in the middle, probably really moderate, probably just watching this and going, this is wild. Why the fuck is this happening? Why did that happen? I'm not even going to go into that because it would be way too political, and there's all sorts of stuff going on that is gross right now politically. And I feel like no matter what side somebody falls on, they kind of feel like that's always the case in politics. But what do we actually need? I've said for a really long time, I'm like, I have this dream where we just put just global economists in Congress and we just balance the budget and we just make it so all Americans thrive. Don't worry, the billionaires don't like that idea, so it's not going to happen. There's a whole lot of benefit that they get from this disparity. Otherwise, it wouldn't be happening. And it's really unfortunate because eventually something like this will fall of its own economic weight. So I have an invitation to all of the billionaires, many of whom I know, many of whom I've met casually, many of whom I don't know at all. And the thing is that it doesn't make sense to me that they don't see how very clearly we need a thriving middle class. And a lot of them are making this pledge, which I get it was like the best they had at the time, right? Warren Buffett started it. This was a great idea of him. Like, give away 99% of your wealth. Except for that, whenever I hear a billionaire doing that to me, I'm like, you sound like a self-congratulatory asshole to me right now. You sound like I am the great savior that's going to come in and distribute this just exactly the way that I want it and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, you know what's a way better idea? Instead of accruing all of these billions of dollars and keeping all of these billions of dollars to yourself and then distributing them in some way when you die, how about if you recognize that all of the people at your company were necessary to make your company function? As I expand my companies, maybe we do become like Amazon, where I own everything. Right? Every single person in my company would be so profoundly well paid that every single person in the country would want to come work for Amazon if I owned it, because everyone would be getting a living wage. Everyone would have higher education for free paid for. Everyone would have 6 to 12 weeks of vacation time. Every single area would have an overage of staff so that when someone's kid gets sick, they can go home and take care of their kid and it doesn't disrupt the flow of production. I wouldn't be squeezing every single penny out of every single thing for investors on the stock market. I would just hold it privately and make sure that everybody was very well paid throughout the whole entire ecosystem of my company. As a result, I would still do all of the billions of dollars in revenue that Amazon is doing, except for that I also would be a coveted place to work. I also would work on the safety standards. I hear that's an issue, etc. I would just make it like the most badass, fun, good feeling place to work, which is what I'm doing with Sticker Junkie with my 16 employees. And you guys get to hold me accountable, and my staff and my employees hold me accountable as I grow this amazing team that we have. These are my coworkers. I don't look at employees like, oh, you're just a peon employee. These are brilliant people who, quite frankly, while I was falling fucking down in the first quarter of this year, so depressed, dysphoric, so sad, really struggling with my mental health, my team got me through. And when I was falling down, they lifted me up. And when I was falling short, they filled in the blanks. And when I couldn't really contribute to come up with the new processes, they did it all. I go in sometimes on the weekend when nobody's there to grab something or to do one thing or another, and it brings me to tears to see the different processes that they put in place or the cool new decorations that they created, or like Dana or Jenny, I think it was Jenny, somebody came up with names for all the different machinery, and then Dana designed like very cool different stickers with the, Myrtle and all of the different names for the machinery and put it on them. Or like came up with the Sticker Junkie Olympics, or Mads. Hey, Mads, congratulations, Mads. Woo, class of 2025 SDSU. I was sick and I missed her graduation party. I'm so sad. But I went in early to pick up some stuff so that I could work from home while I was sick, and like had just balloons and decorations and a big congratulations sign and all the stuff so that when she came in, her desk would be decorated. And I don't usually do any of that because I'm not on the outings committee, because I'm already on too many committees and I don't have any time. And so when I see the way that my team performs, why do they perform that way? Because they have the freedom to come up with really creative, amazing ideas. They see their ideas that they come up with very quickly get implemented into our processes, into our systems. They take agency over the decisions that we give them because we give them agency over their decisions. When we ask Dana, like, hey, please go figure out what the best laminator for us to get is. And she does all of her research and she's like, well, these are the three, and I think this for this and this for that. It's your decision. And I'm like, no, it's literally actually just your decision. You did 100% of the research and we have a budget for any of them. So like, which one do you actually just want us to buy a bunch of? So when you give people agency over their life, freedom to use their whole brain while they're at work, it is extraordinary what they will create. Look at our new stickerjunkie.com website that Emily and Bernardo and David came up with. It's fucking awesome. And we didn't have like a lot of input in that process. Thanks, X Team, based out of Australia. DM me for details on X Team. I am happy to refer them. They did the development on the website, but our team worked in conjunction with X Team to get that created with almost no oversight. Why? Because we hire really brilliant people and we let them run. And so as the company does well, why wouldn't we make sure that our employees do well? And I do literally not understand companies that don't do that. One of our people, I know I've told this story before, but I'm going to do a very quick version of it. One of our people came from a big box retailer that it's a home goods store that every single person that's hearing this has shopped from. And if you call in 3 times in 3 months, you get a write-up. And I said, what happens if you get a write-up? Well, if you get 3 write-ups, you get fired. I was like, excuse me? What do parents do? Do they just work there for 9 months? Are you kidding me right now? And then she goes, no, they just come in sick. And everyone in the front office, there was a lot of us in the room at the time, couldn't believe that I didn't know that. And I was like, oh, that's why. And there's been so many times, I don't know what Starbucks policies are. I actually don't. And I hear that they're a pretty good place to work. But I've several times gone through a Starbucks drive-through, like while I'm on a road trip, and had somebody who literally is noticeably, audibly sick make my coffee and hand it to me. And I'm like, what the fuck? Why the fuck would you come into work? That's so gross. I can't even drink this. You are literally just spreading disease right now. But the answer is that they have to, because most people, like, they don't have a lot of paid sick leave. And even if they could call out sick that day, like even if they were, quote, allowed to, grown ass adults having to make up all kinds of like, oh, I'm super actually sick, instead of just like, yeah, I'm just not coming to work today because I don't feel well. There is this pervasive feeling that I get from my employees before they settle into the fact that they're at a job where they're just treated like a grown-up and like they get to make their own decisions of like, I'm going to get in trouble right now, or I'm going to go to the principal's office, or like, I'm so sorry that I had to call in sick. I am so sorry that I had to call in sick. And I'm like, pretty sure you did not choose to catch that cold. Pretty sure you would have avoided it if you could. So like, I am not sure where all of this over apology is. You didn't intend to do this. I guarantee you would have not done it if it was possible. But I want to create an environment in every single company that I run from this point forward, coming back into sticker junkie in 2023 forward, where it's just like a utopian place to work, period. Is it hard? Yes. Do you have to have a lot of interpersonal communication with every other person on staff to make sure that everybody's happy? And if there's a different squabble or if there's personality differences, do you have to very quickly get in there and say, hey, we don't do that here. Let's sit down. Let's talk about this. Let's figure out what's going on. Nobody ever intends to say something disrespectful in sticker junkie. And if they're just having a bad day, and if they say something that would have been better if they didn't say it, or if they said it in a nicer, kinder way, everybody just sits down. And we're like, oh yeah, fuck, did not mean to say that way. Sorry, I'm having a day. I don't feel very good. Kind of have a headache, a little short-tempered. I have cramps. I don't want to deal with it today, like whatever it is. And everyone moves on. And if it's a problem that we feel like is something that could be a little bit systemic, we say, hey, let's just get you in a little communication training because we just don't do that here. We just don't do that here. Like a lot of our people came from the restaurant industry. And I know that just from Jenny, I have permission to tell every story. Somebody was really not having a good day and she was in a mood when she was not having a good day, this person. And so Jenny probably was also not having a very good day and she sent that person home. And I was like, oh, okay, which is what you do in a kitchen environment because somebody could burn themselves on a hot stove and whatever. And I was like, okay, we don't do that here. And we had a whole discussion of like how demoralizing that is and like how that's just like, that is not okay. If somebody is not having a good day, we sit down and we talk to them. And we're like, hey, you seem like you're having a rough day. And then we'll give them the option to go home if they want to, if they really are not having it. And that's how we handle it. Why? Because we're human beings that understand that humans be humaning. And if somebody is having a really tough day, maybe they just got in an argument with their spouse or maybe something happened, then we understand that you might actually just need a mental health day. Now, right now we are short-staffed, so we do not encourage that. But as the company grows and evolves, it's literally built into our plan that we like have one extra person per department on staff in case somebody's out. Why? We have a lot of parents working for us. Well, what happens when your kid's sick? You got to go pick them up and take care of them, right? Or what happens if your kid has a recital and you want to go see it? Like, we understand that. And the more that we treat our people like humans, like we ourselves want to be treated. I was really sick. I have been out Friday of last week, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday of this week. I have been out for 5 days. Why was I out today? Because I had so much catch-up work and I couldn't go in. But why was I out yesterday? I felt pretty okay. I could have gone in yesterday. Why was I out? Because I didn't know if I was still potentially contagious because I still had a slight fever and there's no fucking way I'm going to go get my whole office sick. That would be catastrophic for us. Like even the economics of the decisions that these businesses are making, I'm like, number one, if all your employees were happy, I guarantee you your revenue would be higher. Number two, if you do as we are doing right now, if you tell the story of why our company is built the way that it is, guess what? People want to buy from you. So if you have a choice to go to a nameless, faceless private equity company where they don't even know that they bought one of our competitors who is 20 or 30 times bigger than we are, and that private equity company, at least that person who was a principal at that private equity company did not know that they owned one of our biggest competitors, there's no possible way that they're treating their employees the way that we're treating our employees because they don't even know that they own that company because they own so many companies. So let's get back to the Milken Institute. So I'm at the Milken Institute. I was watching on stage 5 of the biggest CEOs of 5 of the biggest private equity, like BlackRock and a bunch of the hugest private equity funds were on stage at Milken as they are every year. And I don't have anything against these dudes. I know a lot of these dudes. And they were talking about like, oh yeah, well, we have to get our 7 basis points, which always feels to me like the most asshole-ish way to say like a percentage point. Oh, we need our 7 basis points of growth per year. So we're going to have some fun with AI. So BlackRock has $11.58 trillion under asset management, and they have a desire to grow by 7% annually. Right? That's generally speaking, that's what most private equity funds or most companies are going to want to have, that kind of 7% steady Eddie annual growth. Can you let me know what is 7% of $11.6 trillion?
Absolutely. 7% of $11.58 trillion is about $810.6 billion. So if they hit that growth target, they'd be adding roughly $810 billion in assets annually.
Okay, so I just pulled up ChatGPT to answer that question for you. So their annual desired growth is $850 billion. KK. So our competitors are owned by this $24 billion hedge fund. They're also going to want to grow by 7 or 10% annually. I mean, I'm sure they're targeting higher, but like whatever, let's say it's 10%. That means if they're growing by 10%, they need to acquire $2.4 billion more in assets that year. And then the next year, even more. And the next year, even more. In BlackRock's case, which is the use case that AI just helped us figure out, they're going to want to add an extra $850 billion in assets to manage. That is why all of the apartment complexes are being snatched up. All of the laundromats are being purchased by some consolidator into a giant conglomeration of laundromats. All of the printing companies are being snatched up to get some conglomerate of printing companies. All of the small breweries are being snatched up to get a conglomerate of breweries so that they can go into these huge, large funds that are these faceless, nameless places that truly just care about the bottom line for their investors. And all of them, to different degrees, care about the life of their employees. But I have never heard of one ever that's like, okay, we're going to set up the whole entire portfolio of our management fund so that the top person at the fund never gets paid more than, let's give it a crazy multiple, 20 times more than the bottom person. So I know this is a math heavy episode, but our spread, like we talked about before, is $32 to $112 an hour. That's what people on our salary will get paid. Let's say there's a time where our top end staff is like, oh, hey, $112 an hour, by the way. $112 an hour, by the way, is a base salary of $228,000 a year. So let's say that my top team is like, hey, so I've really been wanting a Ferrari. I don't have a lot of people like that. It'd be more like Brian saying, so hey, I really want just all of the comic books. I want every single comic book that I ever see that I want to buy. I want to be able to afford it. So instead of $228,000, I really would love to make $400,000 a year in base salary. And everybody in our top team says, me too, or 350 or something. And I say, that's a fucking great idea. What is that? So we say, hey, we all want to make $350,000 a year. Okay, let's divide that by 2080, which is the amount of work hours in a year. That would be $168 an hour, right? So then instead of having our lowest base salary be $32 an hour, we would say, well, if the top people on our team are making $168 a year now, let's divide that by 3.5. And the bottom person on our team would then make $48 an hour. That's how we would do it. That's how we would do it. We would say, well, if the top people want to get paid more, we have a ton of cash coming in the door. Are you fucking kidding me? 350 sounds great. But the bottom people are going to get paid $48 an hour and everybody will fall somewhere along that sliding scale. Why wouldn't you do it that way? Yeah, good question. I would do it that way. I will do it that way. I am currently doing it that way. I, as a matter of fact, am still not on payroll. I'm fine. My apartment is paid for through an owner draw. Like I'm fine. But I won't put myself into the payroll pile until every person that is on my team is on a living wage. Yeah. So if it was 20 times for your base salary of $32 an hour, that would be $640 an hour, which is $1.3 million a year. Still great. I have never heard of a private equity company that would do that. I have never even heard of a private equity company that would do 50 times, 100 times. So as I'm watching some of the wealthiest people in the world talk about how they have to hit their 7 basis percentage points and that everything's going to be fine because there's so many different industries that they can roll up and consolidate, I'm like, whoa, this is killing the actual American dream of like buying a house, meeting a partner, having a family. So I'm hearing all of this stuff about creating more families and having good family values, etc., from the same group of people who is decimating Head Start, who is stripping out funding for school lunches for little kids that cannot afford to eat lunch at school, who is taking away money for special education, cutting Medicaid and cutting Medicare, all so that someone that made $400 million in income has to pay $60 million in taxes instead of $100 million in taxes. Excuse me, though, what? Do you know how many rabbit holes of thought that they have to convince people are very incredibly important had to happen in order for the average person to vote for billionaires getting a tax cut at the expense of the Veteran Affairs Office being properly funded. Yeah, we're taking away VA benefits in order to pay for tax cuts for billionaires. So you could say anything that you want in the comments that's political, but the thing is, I'm not being political. I'm literally just telling you what the big, beautiful bill says. So if you'd like to comment on it, my suggestion to you would be to go read it. And all of it works together in a big circle. Like I always say, with the growth, with the production of the company, with that we're rolling out the TV show, that we're building out one business after another, everything is sort of working together. All of this works together too. If we vote in billionaires into office who are going to give tax breaks to their buddies while they're cutting the Office of Veteran Affairs and cutting Medicaid, then that's not going to work out very well for the economy of the country. And if we have very short term, are sort of like throwing a tantrum one day and say, we're going to implement 145% tax on the American people from all products that they buy from China from now on. There was this really funny guy on TikTok, a Chinese guy, sitting in his house, speaking perfect English, of course, sitting in his house, and he had his hands out like this. And he said, do you see this? Do you see this right here? I'm holding in my hand every single thing in my house that's made in America. Nothing. It's nothing. Go look around your house and see what's made in China, because that's going to cost you 145 times more. Now we feel like, oh, we've gotten this big relief because the tariff is only going to be a 30% tax on Americans for every single thing that they buy at Walmart or Target. That's taxation without representation. And that's just what happened when the tariffs came in. Because remember, Americans pay for the tariffs, not the Chinese. That's not how that works. I'm not getting into politics, but it is impossible to talk about private equity or global economics without it being political, because politicians are the ones that are making those decisions. And to say that they are economically illiterate in general, virtually every single politician, I think we have 3 economists who are politicians, and there's probably maybe 10 or 12 more Congress people who actually understand global economics. But it is an incredibly small number, considering that one of the largest jobs of Congress, aside from making laws, is actually balancing the budget. So to have people who are really financially illiterate and then just start yelling and screaming about things that don't make economic sense, running the country and running the budget of the country, kind of insane. And that's a situation that we're finding ourselves in. And it's affecting every single buying choice that we have, because as politicians make different new rules to benefit their homies who own the private equity companies, it allows these private equity companies to become true monopolies, which is what consolidators are. So now you have somebody like Resource Label Group, who is rolling up all of my competitors, and they're becoming a monopoly of printers. And there's fewer and fewer options where you can go to a private company. As a matter of fact, of the players in this space, Sticker App, owned by private equity; Sticker Giant, owned by private equity; Sticker Mule, privately owned by this dude with all of the hats. He keeps posting stuff and then sending things out to the private list from Sticker Mule, of this very radicalized political list that they created when they gave out the free Donald Trump stickers. And Donald Trump gave him like 30 hats after he gifted Donald Trump the statue, which, quite frankly, like, look, if you have a president that's accepting a $400 million bribe in the form of a plane, why wouldn't you give him a $300,000 statue? The dude likes to get presents, which used to be illegal for presidents to do. Why? So that they couldn't get bribed into doing favors for different places. We lived in a country where that was true up until a little over 100 days ago, and now it's legal to bribe politicians. I'm not joking. It was an executive order. You can read about it. You are literally allowed to bribe politicians now. So as favors go towards people that politicians like, which has always been the case, this is not new, okay? And there's plenty of corruption in American politics for everybody, for both sides. That's why there's only 2 sides. The whole is all kinds of things going on. When I am talking about the Republicans, I'm talking about the Republicans. When I'm talking about the Democrats, I'm talking about the Democrats. But there's a whole lot of grift going on in politics, and there has been for a long time. This is not new. It's just worse and more obvious and less democratic than it ever was before. There's an argument that we are no longer a democracy, which is a pretty fair argument. So that guy getting all the hats is smart to go meet with the president if he can. Are you fucking kidding me? There's millions, tens and hundreds of millions of dollars in government contracts up for grabs for printing companies like my own and like his own. And if you can get an audience with the president, He is doing the right thing by doing that. Making it so wow, so wildly over the top on his corporate social media. I don't have enough. I should be sending the guy 30 hats. Keep talking, brah. Because we do live in a polarized society, and a whole lot of people are going to want to support the actual opposite of that. So if you want to support a sticker company and hopefully a bunch of companies that I roll out, where I have an entirely different ethos and different ethic than most companies that are run in this country, it's my job now to go sell the TV show. It's my job now to go sell the documentary, because a whole lot of people that watch that and see that are going to be like, whoa, those people over there, I want to buy from their company. They're fucking rad. And the Sticker Junkie Olympics looked awesome. So thank you for joining us on our journey of actually building this company, because right now we're in the part where we're doing all of the really hard, like long slog, hard stuff, but it's beginning to get more and more fun as we close more and more big contracts. And we closed a humongous contract last Friday. I cannot say who it was, but it's a large institution that orders a large amount of stickers. And that keeps happening more and more. And so now we're in the period of time where I kept saying, like, oh, we're just missing our numbers, but we have all these huge contracts that might close. And now they're closing. Now we're in the period of time where I'm like, I'm going to film a TV show where I'm actually talking to streaming services. Now we're in the period of time where I'm like, we're going to go to the Pride Festival and roll out our Sticker Towers program, where we're actually just about to send all the contracts to all the artists and start submitting tons of artwork to different places to sell Sticker Towers. We are like at the point in time where we are in the middle of the tipping point. And so this episode should get more wild from here. I barely scratched the surface of the Milken Institute, so there will be a part 2 next week of all of the different things that happened from the Milken Institute. So I'll see you next week for another episode of Sticker Wars, and I'll cover the rest of the intrigue and magic at the Milken Institute, because it was wild. I got to like see Tony Blair speak and just so much cool stuff. So much cool stuff. And I met someone that asked me to come speak at a conference in Singapore. Yes, please. So it's going to be a madcap adventure from here on out, because every time I go to something like this, crazy things are going to keep happening. And I have so many of them coming up. I have Summit in Detroit in 2 weeks. I have a bunch of Renaissance weekends that I'm going to. I have the World Economic Forum that I'm going to go to. I have other Milken Institute events that I'm going to go to. I have TED Next coming up, as well as Global TED Conference. It's just on and on and on and on and on and on. Oh, and Necker Island. I'm going to Necker Island. There is so much going on, you guys, that I can't wait to fill you in on. And I want you to understand that even as I get to go to these big fancy ass things and I'm building this company, our company still is only doing $2 million in revenue. So I'm a baller on a budget right now. And to get us to a living wage at Sticker Junkie, we need to make between 14 and 16 million dollars in revenue. So I have to 7 or 8x the revenue in this company to get everyone on my staff at a living wage, even though I'm spending 22% on payroll. Obviously, buy your stickers from stickerjunkie.com. And if you know somebody at a huge company, if you know somebody like at the San Diego Padres, if you know somebody at Planned Parenthood, if you know somebody at GLAD or at any Fortune 500 or any big sports team or any big college or any big institution, let us know. Hook us up. Connect us with them, please, because I guarantee you that they are getting their stickers from one of my competitors right now, and I guarantee you that I would love it if they were getting their stickers from me. And because I know where my bread is buttered, customers will never be better treated than they are within my company. I make sure of it. I hope you're having a great day. Thanks for joining us on this episode of Andrea Lake 101, The Making of a Billionaire. I am going to go and rest my voice and drink some tea and get better so that I do not sound sick and nasally when I join you for next week's episode. Until then, everybody, have a really great week.